Ford. Apparently, you guys are supposed to know about how a company works before you invest. So I've kind of just mashed together information to help you guys out. By the way, not financial advice. I'm trying to give you guys more information. So for anyone who doesn't know, Ford is a car company. That's the end of the video. Thanks for jokes aside. Ford was started in 1903 by Henry Ford and a group of other investors. They released the popular Model T in 1908, and now the Ford F-150 holds the title of the best-selling truck in America for 46 years straight. They employ over 173,000 people as of the end of 2022. And in fiscal 22, they sold 4.2 million cars. So they're just raking in money. Let's look at some of the projects. Some recent changes to their lineup is the introduction of the electric F-150. It's called the F-150 Lightning. Check out an MKBHD video if you want to see a review of that car, because there's no shot that I can afford it. Ford also has a self-driving service called Ford Blue Cruise. It launched in 2021 and is available on these routes. You may have heard recently that Tesla has signed a deal with Ford. The deal will allow Ford cars to charge at Tesla's supercharger network with an adapter. And it's great for Ford and also great for Ford EV owners. Ford also owns the car brand Lincoln. Ford can be divided into a couple of segments. So first there's the Ford Motor Company, which is like the car stuff. And secondly, there was the Ford Credit Company, which does all the financing for car loans. How is their stock performs? I'll be comparing it to GM, Honda, and also the S&P. Ford's gonna be blue, Honda red, S&P yellow, and GM bright pink. The car companies are generally moving together, which, hey, shocker. Companies in the same industry will have similar movements. The S&P is a bit more stable, and anyway, it ends off with Honda in first, followed by Ford, the S&P, and last, GM. Over 5 years, the S&P does rise ahead, which isn't that surprising considering that the other three pay dividends. Link below to find out the definition. And Ford and GM do have substantial jumps, but they slowly fall back down. And it ends off with the S&P, Ford, Honda, and again in last, GM. Over a decade, the S&P just kind of leaves the pack, while Ford and GM's jumps, while they're here and there, but they're kind of steady. And one question you probably have is why have the stocks not really grown over such a long period of time? I mean, it's 10 years. And that brings me to my next topic, dividends. When you look at a stock, you also have to consider dividends, because it's not fair to compare the S&P, which does not pay a dividend, to companies that do without taking them into account. Ford has been relatively consistent with their dividend payments. Their annual dividend yield is 4.23% as of June 15th. If you're unfamiliar with the term, check Investopedia. I'll leave a link in the description. And apart from some pauses in dividend payments between 2006 and 2012, and also during COVID, they have been very consistent with paying dividends out to shareholders. I'd like to give you this number to consider, a PE ratio. The Investopedia link is going to be below. And a PE ratio is basically how much extra money you're going to have to pay per dollar of profit. These are as of June 15, 2023, but also be careful here, because if a company makes a loss, it can kind of make the numbers come out pretty weird. I'll put some other numbers so you get a more comprehensive view, and those are going to be net income percentage and also the dividend yield. By the way, I'm replacing the S&P with Volkswagen, and I'm going to use the most recent financial statements because I was using the annual ones before. But remember, while these numbers are important, and I'm going to get into more numbers next, there's still a company underneath all these numbers and financial results. And there are just some things that cannot be captured with a clean number or some ratio. Some things, you can't put a number on them. Revenue it's remained pretty consistent. They slightly dipped down during the pandemic, but they rose back pretty quickly. And fiscal 22's revenue was $158 billion. Net income is kind of all over the place. They first start off at $1.3 billion, and then the next year they break even. And the year after that, in 2020, they lose $1.3 billion. But in 2021, they make nearly $18 billion, but then it dips down to negative $2.2 billion. If you're asking why did Ford make so much money in 21, but then have the biggest fall off in 22, I'll explain, but it's kind of complicated, so bear with me. Ford was an investor in Rivian, and since the Rivian stock price rose, they had to mark up the value on the books by $9.1 billion. But since they didn't sell, they did not lock in the gains. But technically, it was a profit. And then, once 2022 came rolling around, Rivian's value fell by $7.4 billion. And even though Ford didn't lose actual cash or actual dollars, they had to record that 7.4 billion as a loss. And that's one of the reasons why net income is so high in 21, but then so low in 22. After the crash, Ford ended up selling their Rivian holdings. If you look at the deal, Ford invested 1.2 billion, they sold it for 3, so they made 1.8 billion in realized gains, actual cash. So I don't think they're too sad about how the deal ended up. By the way, if you guys are advanced and you want to look at the other statements, here you go. Here is the income statement. Here is the balance sheet. And finally, here is the cash flow statement. Remember, if you guys see anything weird, just go to the annual report, scroll down, and there's probably going to be a paragraph that expands on what exactly happened. Please like the video, comment down below about what you guys want to see next, and maybe give me a sub if you want to. I also made a video about GM, so you guys can check that out if you want to. It's going to be slightly different because I'm constantly changing things, and the link's down in the description below. So, thanks. Peace out.